This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Everyone cheering, Super Smiley. His message of unconditional love. Paws in the air for Super Smiley. Here to save the day.
Kindness is the way. We begin now. Hi, everybody. We are on a Super Smiley Adventure. And on this show, we know that animals are healers and teachers, and they will always lead us on grand adventures if we're just open to what they have to say and where they're leading. I'm Megan Blake, dog trainer and the pet lifestyle coach. And here on our show, you get pet information, but even better, inspiration and integration for all things you can use to enhance your life with your pet. And our show is inspired and named after my dog, Super Smiley, who led me on a lifetime of adventures, and his spirit lives eternal. Smiley was a shelter dog who was abandoned 3 times on the streets of downtown Los Angeles, and he survived. And he inspired the world's first kindness program, teaching kids kindness through pets, the Super Smiley Project. We traveled the country speaking to thousands of kids about the lessons that pets can teach us. Smiley led me on many life adventures. With real life travel, we had a PBS television series. He taught me the intimate, subtle communication for dog training, but most importantly for me, dog wisdom. How do dogs inspire us? How do they reveal the everyday miracles that surround us every moment? And our 2 guests today, they are so perfect, especially for this aspect of our adventures. Now, first, how many of you all have heard the phrase Godwink? The phrase was created and made popular by a wonderful man named SQuire Rushnell, who authored the New York Times bestseller named Godwink. A Godwink describes events that seem to go beyond coincidence and into the realm of divine intervention. Squire is a veteran ABC television network executive, and among the many other accolades, his television programming has won over 75 Emmy Awards. He led Good Morning America to the #1 television spot, and he's here today with his fabulous co-author, who also happens to be his beautiful wife, Louise DuArt. Now, Louise, she's one of the greatest comedic impressionists in the entire world. She hosted the super popular ABC Family Channel talk show Living the Life, and she starred and received rave reviews on Broadway. And they're here today with their brand new book. Okay, can y'all guess the name? It's From Godwink to Dogwinks, a book of true stories of dogs and events that go far beyond coincidence into the world of miracles. So I'm so excited to welcome to Super Smiley Adventure. Hi, SQuire Rushnell, Louise DuArt. Hi.
Hey.
Hello.
Hi.
We're so happy y'all are here. I wanted to make sure I gave a proper introduction so everyone knew the fabulous people that we had with us today.
Where? Where are they?
So funny. You're so cute. Everybody, we're on Zoom so I can see them, but we get to hear right from them. You're going to hear it's all about their book. And I'm so excited to talk with you both because for me, seeing the extraordinary in life is one of life's secrets. I bet you 2 would agree with that. Am I right?
Yes.
So how do you feel that the extraordinary just lifts us higher?
Well, I think that a Godwink is always a hopeful connection to somebody who is up there bigger than all of us. Now, we call that God. Other people in different countries over different boundaries call it something else. But there is a connection with somebody up there. And whenever you get a Godwink, you know that that's a concrete connection to somebody who up to this point may have been not visible in your life or not present in your life and unknown and uncertain in your life. But the moment you get a Godwink, you know that it's like having a handrail on a wobbly staircase. You have got something to hold on to.
I love that. And so I said it very quickly, just so people would have a basis for what we're talking about. But how do y'all define a Godwink? Tell the people.
A Godwink is a new word in the language. And when it first went into our first book 20 years ago, our first book, we kind of thought maybe it was the same as coincidence. But we soon realized that coincidence is a word that has 2 unexpected things coming together, and they come together without causal effect. There's no cause. But a Godwink are 2 things that come together with and effect. It's a divine effect. And so therefore, the word coincidence didn't work. As a matter of fact, in the Hebrew language, they don't even have the word coincidence because they don't need it. If everything comes from God, what do you need a coincidence for? Anyway, Godwink went right into the language. And so we often say that it's a coincidence that is not a coincidence of divine origin. But it's also, a Godwink is also another term for answered prayer. There is no word in our language for answered prayer. Therefore, if somebody had their prayer answered, you have to say the whole long thing. I just had an answered prayer. Or you can have a Godwink.
I love that. It's so yes, it's so concise and so right to the point. You get what it means. And now your newest book, Dogwinks. Tell us about this adventure.
Well, that's an extension of a Godwink. It's a book about Godwinks, and that's what we talk about are Godwinks. But when a book about Godwinks, true stories of real life experiences, has a dog right at the center of the story, we thought it would be fun to call it Dogwinks. Stories of dogs. And so that's what a Dogwink is. And in this book, we have 20 different stories that are just absolutely amazing. And every single one is our favorite. It depends on which one we're looking at the moment.
I love that. And I have the book right here. I'm going to rattle the pages for the people to hear. And as Louise, as you all can see, I've got my little markers in there for my favorite spots. I just love it. And also I want you all to know, but also all the listeners to know that I bought Godwinks, like you said, about 20 years ago. And it is one of my favorite books in my library. I had no idea. Let's call that a Godwink, that 20 years later, I'm talking to you all right here. I love that.
Love it.
And you, SQuire, you mentioned all the many stories in the book. The first story in the book is about Ruby, and Ruby is an Australian Shepherd Border Collie mix. And I had a Border Collie one time. His name was Guardian, and he did show me many, many miracles. But Ruby, the Border Collie star of this story, was impossible to place in a home. And this is a very special tale with its own upcoming adventure. Tell us about the Netflix deal that's coming up.
Yeah, let me just tell you briefly what the Ruby story is, because Ruby was unadoptable. She was just this wonderful little dog, Border Collie, Aussie, and she was very smart as they are, but she was also very mischievous and a high energy. And so she was brought back by 5 different families. And the last time they had on her report nipping children. So the lawyers got all worried about that. They put her on the list to be euthanized in 2 hours. The head of the SPCA called the woman trainer, Pat Inman, who had always worked with all of the other dogs, getting them ready for their adoptive interviews, so they could put their best paw forward. And Pat just loved Ruby. But when she heard that Ruby was going to be put down in 2 hours, she went right over to the SPCA and she said, "You can't do this. You got to save Ruby. You must save her. There's got to be something you can do. Can't you take her home?" She said to the manager, he said, "Well, I tried taking Ruby home, but I got 3 dogs and they didn't get along. Can't you take her home?" She said, "Well, my husband said if I bring home another dog, that's it." She said, "There's got to be something. Can't you call the state police canine unit?" He said, "In 10 years that I've been here, they have never taken one of our dogs. They get these dogs that are bred for search and rescue. They cost $15,000 from, Czech Republic and places like that." She left. Pat Inman left. She put the shelter in the rear view mirror. She cried all the way home. She just couldn't bear to even look back because she didn't want to know what happened to sweet Ruby. But the manager decided to call the commander of the state police anyway. Divine alignment of Godwinks. When you're at the right place at the right time for a Godwink to take place. He had just been told that his budget had been cut. He didn't have the money for that dog that he was going to buy for $15,000. And he had a trooper who was ready for that partner. So he said, "I'll come and take a look. I don't know if this is going to work. I'll come and take a look." Well, he paired up Ruby with Trooper Dan O'Neill. They both had ADD. Trooper Dan O'Neill had ADD all during his childhood through police academy. And of course, Ruby had ADD, you know. So anyway, they worked hard. And after about 6 months, Ruby overcame all of her objections to minding and being obedient, and she became an absolutely champion search and rescue dog. Fast forward a couple of years. It is a cold night in Providence, Rhode Island, where this true story takes place. They get a call that there's a boy lost in the woods, and they go into the woods, and Ruby takes off, finds a boy at the bottom of a ravine. Ruby's already there before Dan can catch up with her. She is doing the dog version of CPR. She's licking all of his orifices, which were clogged with blood because he had a gash in his head. And so when Trooper Dan arrives, the boy suddenly took a breath. There was a pulse. He radioed his team. They all came, put him on a stretcher, took him to the hospital. So Dan went to the home of the parents to let them know the good news and where to find the boy. They wept with joy. They were so thankful, so thankful. And Trooper Dan turned to leave, and the mother said, "Officer, have you ever heard of a dog named Ruby?" He said, "Ma'am, Ruby is the name of the dog that just saved your boy." She said, "I'm Pat Inman. I'm the volunteer trainer who advocated for Ruby. I never knew what happened."
Yeah.
But Officer Dan said, "That means, ma'am, that the dog that you saved, Ruby, is the dog that just saved your life."
Your son's life, yes.
Your son. And that was such a major Godwink and such a wonderful Dogwink in this book that when we had the opportunity to pitch it to Netflix, they cried and they said, "That's the movie we want to do."
Oh, what a beautiful, beautiful story, Squire. And the fact that it's true. And Louise, the reaction you had just then, yes, I feel tears in my eyes. It is just beyond amazing. The Godwinks, the Dogwinks, and what dogs do in our lives.
You know, I think what's so interesting in the time that we're living in right now, there's so much animosity, you know, there's so much uncertainty out there. No one knows what's going to happen next. It's like a powder keg. What's going to take, blow up next? But one thing, whether you're Republican, Democrat, no matter what religion you are, it doesn't matter. Everyone loves their dog.
Yeah.
That's the common denominator. And, with this particular story is about canine officers, and they're beautiful. I mean, they're the stories that we've heard from Dan O'Neill himself, how wonderful and dedicated they are. But, with Netflix, I think what they love so much about it was that it was a feel-good movie, and it's going to give people hope, and hopefully it will heal some hearts too.
Yes.
Yes. I believe that animals, as I said at the beginning of the show, animals are healers and teachers. And we're all right on the same track here. And Louise and Squire, I want to hear more about Dogwinks, about how dogs and animals have touched your lives personally right after this break. But before Smiley passed, he'd be right here with me on my sofa. And before every break, I'd say, "Smiley, can you wait?" Good boy.
Pets are part of the family. Make sure you can always afford the quality health care they need with Easy Pet Check, a nationwide pet insurance alternative. With Easy Pet Check, you'll save up to 75% on all your pet's health care at any licensed veterinarian in the U.S. Easy Pet Check accepts all dogs and cats regardless of pre-existing conditions. Visit EasyPetCheck.com. That's the letters EasyPetCheck.com. Taking care of your pet can be easy with Easy Pet Check.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Everyone cheering, Super Smiley, his message of unconditional love.
And we're back on a Super Smiley Adventure with the wonderful authors of the beautiful new book, Dogwink, SQuire Rushnell and Louise DuArt. Welcome back, Squire and Louise.
Hey, great to
good
be
to
here.
be with you, Megan.
Thank you. So, Squire and Louise, tell us about animals in your life, in your personal lives, how you were inspired to write Dogwinks through the animals around you.
It was interesting because we've written so many Godwink books, and Squire and I we pray every day. We're kind of prayer warriors, and partnered prayers. We pray every day, and so we ask God to guide us. What do you want us to do next? Suit us up, and like we said, we just want to bring hope and encouragement. So one time during our prayer session, afterwards I said to Squire, something? I said, I think we should do a book about dogs. And I said, dogs? I said, yeah, there's so many great stories about dogs. And then he came up with the name, well, we'll call it Dogwinks. I said, oh my God, that's perfect. But so then we had to look for stories. All right. We know there's a lot of stories, but we didn't have any stories. I have a Facebook post called Godwinkers. And the Godwinkers, we kind of pray for each other and hold each other up. And so we were praying, okay, God, we need dog stories. Well, the next day I'm on Godwinkers, and a woman writes, hey, there's a great Godwink story about this canine officer in Providence, Rhode Island. You should check it out. And she gave us I guess it was the Providence Press or whatever it was, the newspaper. And that's how that all started. But that was just one. When we're about to write a book, it's incredible. It's like all of a sudden things start pouring in right in our house. It's like, it's like you open the door and there's another Dogwink. And so we just got so many Dogwink stories. We actually had to sift through, and we're saying we've got to do a Dogwink 2 book because there's so many stories.
Oh, I love that. And I know that they both will be bestsellers. Everybody wants to hear these stories. And as I said, I read the entire book, every single story. And one of the aspects I loved about this book, though, Dogwinks, is that you have a reflection at the end of each story. Do you remember one of your favorite reflections?
Well, when you think about dog and God, they're big letters, and they have a lot of the same attributes. You think about it. God is faithful, so is a dog. God loves us unconditionally, so does a dog. God is patient, so are dogs a lot of the times. And God is always in the moment, and so are dogs. And I, as a little girl growing up, I always loved dogs. As a matter of fact, I could relate to dogs more than I could people. I just love dogs. And every Christmas on my Christmas list, the first thing I would put is dog. But my mother was deathly afraid of dogs. And she kept saying, no, Louise, you're not going to get a dog. Well, she had a reason to be deathly afraid. Her grandfather got bit by a rabid dog and he died. And so she had this terrible fear of dogs. I mean, back in the day, my mother lived to be 101. So back in the day, So every year, same thing, I put dog on my list and she'd turn it down. So one day I asked, I guess once too many, and she said, Louise, the only way you're going to get a dog if someone leaves you a dog in their will. So that was the last time I asked, but God did kind of answer my prayer because Mr. Stellberger, who was our tenant, he had an elderly mother and she needed a dog sitter. And even though I was only 12 years old, Mr. Stellberger said, Louise loves dogs. She'd be perfect. So when I met Spotty for the first time, it was love. Spotty loved me. I love Spotty. I lived for when I could dog sit Spotty. That was my whole life. And I just prayed that, one day I would get my own dog, but that was good enough for me. But one day there was a knock on the door. Mr. Stellberger said, I have some sad news. My mother passed away, but she left something to Louise in her will. And my mother said, Louise in her will? I'm only a kid. And yeah, it's in the back seat. I'll go get it. And out of the back seat on a leash comes Spotty and says, my mother left Spotty to you in her will. And I looked at my mother and I said, oh, Ma, can I keep her? Can I keep her? And I saw my mother's eyes darting and it was like an eternity. And finally she said, well, I guess I don't have a choice. Well, Spotty then became mine and my mother ended up loving Spotty too. So that was really, other than Squire, Spotty was the love of my life.
Aw, Louise, that is a beautiful story. I remember that story in the book, but I didn't realize it was you. So everybody, Louise's story is written out in the book. It is so beautiful. And I wrote down some quotes, some of the reflections that I love. And I don't think this is from Spotty, but it reminds me of it. This is a quote from the book. Every creature is divinely aligned with others, mysteriously, auspiciously, and often unknowingly. And only later can we see the invisible threads that connected us, causing us to be exactly where we were supposed to be to fulfill our destiny.
That's
Yes.
right. That's right. It's so true because, we live our lives forward, but we really understand it backwards. It's not until we get to a certain point in our journey and we wonder why this happened to me, or why did that happen to me? Why did that door close? Or why did that door open? And you look back and you see that there was this beautiful tapestry of our life that was being woven. But sometimes we only see it from the underside. We see all it mangled and all the knots. But when you pull back on the lens and see it from God's point of view, it's a beautiful picture of our lives. And every single thread is tied together perfectly.
I love that. And I love that you use the word perfectly. It's very, very true. I have so many Godwinks and Dogwinks. And let me just tell one of my little Dogwinks. I had moved my horse. I lived in Malibu, California for 20 years, and the fires were coming through all the time. And the neighborhood ended up burning down. And my horses lived in the backyard. It was a beautiful property, and I had to move them all back. So I moved back here to North Carolina, where my family was. And I had my 2 horses and my 2 dogs, but I needed to settle me as a human back into the community. Because Louise, I feel like you, I think we're kindred spirits. When I was a little girl, I was the closest to my dogs and my kitty cats, and I could talk to them, and I felt more connected to them than with people many times. But I prayed to God that I needed to have a connection, a person, someone who would help direct me to reintegrate. And I went to church and I prayed, God, please let me meet someone at church today, just as a friend, or maybe someone who could direct me in some way to connect with people, like-minded people. And it didn't happen. I went to my car afterwards and I was so lonely, and I was sitting in the parking lot. Oh, and I was just so sad and so alone. And I hear this little yip, 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 barking, yip, 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 yip. And I look out my car window right down below where right by my car, there's this little white dog. And then she's on a leash, and I follow the leash up. And I see this beautiful elderly woman, but gorgeous, like Helen Mirren, elderly gorgeous. I mean, just gorgeous in these black leggings. And she has a German accent. And she's like, hello. And I tell her I'm a dog trainer, and we became best friends. And she made sure my horse, my beautiful Starfire, had blankets for the winter. And she got a handyman for me to make sure the barn was just perfect for Starfire. And we are best friends. And the handyman was my angel taking care of my animals. So I left the church, thinking, oh, it didn't happen. And I sat in my car, and we were introduced by the dog. This is the whole point. Dogwink and Godwink. We were introduced by the little dog, Lucy.
Yes.
That's a
There
dog.
you go.
And I notice it even in our lives. We will pray about something and say, hasn't happened. I wonder what's going on. And maybe God closed the door, or whatever. But he also works in the 11th hour. God does that a lot. He's kind of waiting in the wings,
Well, he often arrives on a different pathway
Yes,
than
he
the
does.
one we are expecting, too.
Different
We're
time.
on this pathway.
Yes.
We're expecting him on this pathway, and yip, 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 yip,
Yes.
yip, yip,
Right.
getting our attention.
That's
Yeah.
right. And everyone has Dogwinks and Godwinks, but people will say, well, I don't know, how do you get Godwinks? There's a wonderful William Temple who was a pastor. What is it?
He was an evangelist
He's
in
an evangelist.
1650.
He's very English, he's
Yeah.
very English, and
She was a sir.
he was a sir. So it must
Yes.
be very important. And he said, when I pray, coincidences happen. When I don't, they don't. So he didn't have the word Godwink at that time, but
We can't blame him.
we
for
can't
that.
blame him for that.
Yeah.
But when you pray, Godwinks happen. Because, there's a wonderful scripture in Proverbs that says, in all your ways acknowledge me, and I shall direct your paths. So once we acknowledge that God is the author of everything, creator of everything, our animals, we pray to him, he will start directing our paths. It'll be like the signposts, along the highway. They don't tell you where to go, but they tell you where you are along the way. And Godwinks are it's like a gift outside your doorstep. You have to open the door and open your gift.
Yeah.
So you have to look for them. They're there. And the more you see them, the more you see them. It is incredible. People say to us, we'll even be with someone and we'll be talking or having dinner, and all of a sudden these Godwinks will happen everywhere. And they say, oh my gosh, it's because you're the Godwinker people. And we said, no.
Well,
They're
we
for
just happen
everyone.
to see them.
We see them, and we're
Yeah.
teaching other people
And,
to see
and
them.
we need to teach everybody that they happen to everybody. We just need to teach you how to look for them
Yes.
and expect them at all times, and then to appreciate them when they are there.
That's
They
right.
are just amazing. It's like a person-to-person message directly to you
Yes.
at that moment.
Mhm.
Out of 8 billion people on the
Yeah.
planet, directly to you. How special were you at that moment, Megan, when that little Dogwink was barking at you?
Mhm.
You were special out of 8
That's
billion
right.
people.
And God wants to do that for all of us.
Yeah.
That's all we have to do is ask. He said, ask and it shall be given. So I'm
Yeah.
going to take him at his word.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. And that's like what I said at the beginning of the show. I believe that animals are healers and teachers, as I know you do. And my show is Super Smiley Adventure. They will lead us on grand adventures if you are willing to be open and see it. And we know that it is their spirit, it is our spirit, all interconnected, as you said from the quote that I read from your book, that we have to see it. That's the bottom line of what you just said. Oh, I'm so excited to have you all here. We all are kindred souls. I'm just going to declare it. I declare it right now.
Talked about their healers, and they literally are healers. There's a wonderful story in the book about a dog named Sierra. And it was a woman who her son he was going to Afghanistan for a year. And he said, Mom, can you take my dog? Well, she lived in this teeny little place and he had this huge husky. And she thought, oh my goodness, we're never going to fit in this house together. But for her son's sake, she said, okay, I will. So her and Sierra got along great. But one day she's just sitting watching TV and Sierra came over and started pushing with his nose on her stomach, and it hurt. And she yelled at the dog, and she said, "You stop it! You go in the other room." And the dog left, and then she felt terrible. She went looking for the dog and found the dog in a closet. And the dog was it's a husky. And huskies, I didn't realize this, but huskies, it gets moist around their eyes if they get upset. I guess it's like they cry. So she saw this husky, and she felt so bad, and she thought, why would he do that? And so an instinct inside of her said, call your doctor. She called her doctor. She said, I know this sounds weird, but my dog, he did this. And he said, well, okay, come in. We'll do some tests. He did some tests, called her that night. And he said, your dog's instincts were absolutely correct. You have ovarian cancer and your dog detected it before we even could. So he was able to remove it because, it was detected so early, but it was the dog. And we hear that all the time. We just saw, I just sent SQuire a story today that I saw on the news about a dog, the same thing, a dog that, they heal us. They find a dog that actually his owner had a seizure or something. And the dog went outside and looked for a neighbor and kept going around and around the dog. And the neighbor saying, what's the matter with him? Led to the man and saved his life.
I think I saw this. It was on YouTube, on the news, just recently. I saw this on the news. I know, and there's so much more to talk about on this almost, I call it an interdimensional connection that we all have with each other and dogs and animals. And we will continue this right after this break. Smiley, are you with us? Good boy.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There's no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms. And our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Hi, I'm Amanda Seyfried, and I am on the Super Smiley Adventure.
Everyone's here is Super Smiley. His message of unconditional love.
And we're back on a Super Smiley Adventure with SQuire Rushnell and Louise DuArt, the best-selling authors of the exquisite new book, Dogwinks. Now, SQuire and Louise, this is a very, very, very much purpose-driven book. So how do you hope it will affect people? What is your grandest vision for this?
Well, every single story that we ever write or every movie that we ever make, like the Hallmark movies, all of them have one central mission for us, and that is to bring people hope. Winks are signs of hope directly from God, and we just want to spread that as far and wide as we can. And in every story, we look for the moments where we can raise the hope up in the story and pay off the story in the right kind of a way so that somebody will walk away and say, this gives me hope. I was not hopeful before I read this, but now I have hope.
And that they're not alone. We often say a Godwink is like when little kids sitting at the big table with grandma and grandpa and a few other people that they love, and all of a sudden a grandpa will give you a little wink. And you didn't say, oh, I wonder what you meant by that. It meant, hey, kid, I'm thinking about you. I love you. I'm looking at you. So that's what a Godwink is. And, as SQuire talked about the Hallmark movies, we do Godwink Christmas Hallmark movies. And one of the things that people love more than anything about the movies, I think, is that at the very end, we show, because they're all true stories, we show the real people. So at the end of the Netflix film, with Ruby, we're going to see Ruby, who, by the way, became Hero Dog of the Year.
Yes.
Ruby and Pat Inman and Officer Dan and all the other people. And we have a great cast. Can we share who's in it?
Sure. Grant Gustin.
Who
is the hero
Flash.
of The Flash, which is a 7-season series on CW.
And Scott
He
Wolf.
is fabulous.
Scott Wolf was in Party of Five, and he's done a lot of movies. And they're still cast, and we're leaving actually soon to go to Canada. We're going to film it in Canada, and then it should be out first of the year.
Yep.
Congratulations. This is wonderful. This is so exciting. So, and will that'll be on Netflix? Is that what you said? Awesome. Everybody will look for that. And the book is out. And I have to tell you all another coincidence. I don't know if this is in the category of Godwink, but Super Smiley, my beautiful dog who's now in heaven watching over us, he was the national spokes dog for the Hero Dog Awards 2 years in a row.
Whoa.
And they usually only have them for 1 year, but we did such a great job as a team that he was the spokes dog for Hero Dogs 2 years in a row. And Smiley was also a dog actor, and we did Hallmark movies. Smiley was in The Ultimate Legacy. He played Raquel Welch's dog. So we have so much in common. It's just so fun.
Oh, that's so great.
There's some Godwinks, right?
There's some Godwinks happening here. And do you have any other personal Dogwinks or Godwinks that you want to share with everybody? I know they're just one after the other.
Let me tell you a story that when I heard about Smiley, I thought maybe this would Smiley, if Smiley's listening right now, which I'm sure he is, that he would love this story, okay? This is a story about Ginger. Now, the protagonist in this story is a young woman by the name of Liz Pennicott, and she was on her way to college, and she was feeling very, very torn because she had to leave behind her dog Ginger. Her dog Ginger was 14. Her mother to take good care of Ginger, and they kissed and they hugged and they spent a lot of time together, and she let her hang out the window like she loved to do, but she had to go to college and she had to leave Ginger behind. She was not even at college yet, and she was thinking about all of the times that her snapshots in her mind would flash when she would think about Ginger, about that first time she picked her out when she was 6 years old. When Liz was 6 years old, she picked out this dog from a shelter and saw the ginger color. And when the man said, "What are you going to name her?" Ginger. And she loved Ginger's sweet disposition, how Ginger would never complain when Liz dressed her up in those floppy hats and the dang earrings and the scarves from her mother's closet and so forth. She was just patient. And Ginger always loved to have her picture taken. In fact, that led Liz to become an amateur photographer, always taking pictures of Ginger. And there was one October where she had there was a shot on the side lawn where Ginger was sitting there, and Ginger was the same color as all of the leaves around her. And so Liz took that shot, and she thought, well, that's a good shot. Anyway, a few weeks later, she saw a little ad that said, we're looking for calendar dogs. So she thought, well, I know this is a long shot. So she sent in the picture of Ginger and never thought that she would hear anything from it. And she didn't. Anyway, fast forward another year, and there she is at her first year of college. She hadn't been at college very long. In fact, not even a matter of 48 hours, and her mother called and said, you need to come back home, honey, because Ginger is not doing well. And so Liz drove all the way home all night long to get there, to be able to wrap Ginger in a blanket, sit on the living room floor, and to rock her and to cuddle her, to say the things that she wanted to say to her as she took her last breath. She felt so sad. She didn't even hear the doorbell ring. Her mother went to the door and came back. There was a package, and she handed it to Liz, and Liz was befuddled by that. And so she opened it up, and it looked like a book with a little yellow tab on it. She opened it, and she began to cry because it was her picture that she took of Ginger as Ginger was sitting in those leaves, surrounded by the leaves the same color as her coat, and she was Miss November.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So this Godwink at that moment, divinely aligned at that moment by God, to come at that moment to lift up Liz's hopes, lifted up the hopes of everybody who read that story and who will read that story in the book Dogwinks.
I love that. And I wish that this could be video, because to all the listeners out there, SQuire just held up the little picture of Ginger in the calendar, and it's just so precious. It was so precious. And yes, the story of hope, the theme of hope. And I feel like just touching the book and holding it and hugging it, because it's so beautiful. And I actually have one more dog wink to share with you all, with everybody, about Super Smiley. This was his last dog wink. I think I'm going to get more from heaven, but his last living dog wink. I had my German Shepherd, who is Smiley's dog partner, Angel, and she passed away in 2018, 3 years ago. And I knew that I wanted another German Shepherd for Smiley's friend, but I just wasn't emotionally able to go there. I know you all know what I mean, but I knew I wanted a German Shepherd. And I also knew that I wanted to get one while Smiley was still with us, because he could help train her. Dogs are much better dog trainers than humans are. And that's why I learned so much from dogs. So I definitely wanted one before he passed. But for 3 years, I didn't get one. Now imagine, this is over 150 weeks. Over 150 weeks, I did not get a German Shepherd, didn't get a dog. I never even looked into it. But just a month ago, I had this urgent feeling I have to adopt a German Shepherd. It was urgent. It was like it was shouting in my head. I have to get the German Shepherd now, capital N-O-W, now. Now, it took a few weeks to find the right one to adopt, but we adopted a beautiful girl German Shepherd dog, and Smiley trained her for 1 week, telling her not to dart out the doors and where to sit when the people have dinner. Then suddenly something burst in Smiley's abdomen, and he passed away a week later. And I believe with all my heart, every cell in my body, that after 150 weeks with no companion dog, not searching for the dog, Smiley knew his time was short, and he let me know that I had to get that dog right now. Yeah. And I got the message, and I got one, and Smiley got to spend 1 week with her, and that was Smiley's parting Godwink to me. I know y'all can see me.
That's so special, because it's such a message of God's divine timing.
Yeah.
That urge, that that Holy Spirit in you that said, I must get this dog now,
Yes.
was really that, when we, in the Bible, talks about the still small voice of God, but you listen to it.
Yes.
And that's why, now that you have comfort, that gives you comfort, knowing that Smiley was with you. God made sure that Smiley was right there.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. Yes.
Time.
it was perfect. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. And we could just go on forever and ever, but we have already talked so long. I mean, Louise and SQuire, this has just flown by. I am so grateful to have met you in person, and so grateful to have your book and the Godwinks book from 20 years ago. Thank you so much for joining us on a Super Smiley Adventure.
It was a joy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so
Really
much.
fun.
Thank you. And everybody out there, you must go out and get Dogwinks. It's the beautiful, beautiful new book by SQuire Rushnell and Louise DuArt. And let me know what you all think. Let me know about your Dogwinks. And everybody, you all can reach me here at Pet Life Radio or on my website at meganblakeofficial.com or at webeginnow.com. You can find everything I'm doing on my YouTube, dog training videos, social media, everything on my websites. And thank you again to the fabulous, amazing, beautiful, best-selling authors SQuire Rushnell and Louise DuArt for their beautiful, inspiring books, Dogwinks. Thank you. And thank you to our super producer, Mark Winter, and for our fabulous bumper music that he composes and performs. Thank you to everybody who loves their pets. Thank you all for joining a Super Smiley Adventure. And remember, wherever you are with your pets, we begin now.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.